incentive to do so. Beyond that, it's a private market.
So you're saying they can't come into the
Correct. Correct.
Can't?
Or cannot.
They'd have to use the power of eminent domain to take the whole building and jeopardize the tax credits
It's
as well.
more than 10, 15 million.
I'm sorry, Mr. County. You know, this is my development.
Right, and the county understands that this is supposed to be a tax credit project, and they don't look at them that way at all. They're not public housing projects that they think that they control.
Quite frankly, that would defeat the purpose of the tax credit program. This is supposed to be a better alternative to public housing by being controlled by the private market and making us beholden to our investors.
But there again, too, that leads into my confusion why your expert brought up about the Montgomery County Housing Authority reporting a need and a waiting list of 578 households for these type of units.
So when you apply for grants, when you apply for making a case, so if I was trying to write a grant for Genesis Housing, I would tell you a very sad story about Pottstown, and I would put every sad story I could put in to make that show how much you should fund our grant. If you're coming to invest in town, I might tell you all the good things that are happening in town and the other investors. And so they ask, are there any other agencies that show their need? And in the county, there's a tremendous need for handicapped units, and that's what she's showing. Not that that we're going to house 500 people in wheelchairs, because that's not what this is designed for.
But at some point, if you're presenting information that states that this is available for that, the counties or the state and their tax credits are going to say, wait a minute, you gave us misinformation here.
They don't see it that way. They ask every place. They ask every place.
They're only
how much,
relying on the information that you're giving them.
Yeah, they ask marketing studies, and the marketing studies always go to the housing authority and say, how long is your waiting list for this, and how long is your waiting list for that. And every market study in these things show that information. But that doesn't mean that that's who we would rent to.
In the same vein, they require that the housing authority submit a statement of their waiting list, and this corroborates that information. Does that have a direct impact on who we're leasing to? No, it does not. But again, it demonstrates the need it's a socioeconomic statistic that demonstrates the need for reinvestment in Pottstown. On the flip side of that coin, we submit a huge section stating all of the public infrastructure that you've done in the past 5 years, the local tourism initiative that was just launched, Bike Pottstown, the carousel, local events. We paint the pretty picture to say why this is a great place to live and why people would want to come here and choose this for their home. It's all providing the whole picture of Pottstown. We basically have to assume that the people in Harrisburg have never heard of any community. If we were located in Pittsburgh, we would have to submit the same information. It's basically starting from square one and saying, here's a community, here's the need, here's what they have going for them, here's how we want to advance that.
And then there's long sections describing what we want to do. There's all the statistical and background information, and then we say, this is the project we're proposing, and that's what they score the points off of the project that we say we're proposing. And that's what we'll be telling you about, is the way that we're proposing the project, not necessarily what the county or some other agency might want us to do. But this is the project that we think is a good match for Pottstown.
Any other questions?
One quick one, because you said you addressed the parking concerns, and I want to go back to that. Because the allowable amount of adults in the building would require, if it was all adults, could potentially have a need for 106 and a half cars. That doesn't include, that's just residents. That doesn't include the Art Fusion employees, visitors, caretakers, and parents for students. So how was that being addressed? By how much?
So we prepared a plan that met the current zoning ordinance, and we heard clearly the concern that that wasn't sufficient parking. And so we are looking at acquiring adjacent property to expand the parking and increase the number of parking spaces. But we don't have site control yet, so we can't be telling you exactly where publicly about what we're trying to do, but we're happy to talk to you privately about exactly where we're trying to acquire and where we are in that process.
because you're saying trying to acquire, there is that possibility that you will not be able to acquire those neighboring properties.
One particular property maybe, but we're committed to acquiring.
Is your composition most likely to be more difficult this year than last?
Yeah.
And those products that are applying most likely have political support for their use? Is it possible?
Last year, I can fairly say we were beaten on political support. The winning projects in Montgomery County professed their support to the state for their local project, and they received the investment that unfortunately Pottstown did not last year.
And Genesis Housing was involved with another project in another part of the county, and they had full support for it, bringing in apartments, and these were family units, 2 and 3 bedroom units. But they thought it would improve their area, fit in with their redevelopment ideas, and so they fully supported it. And we added that extra political support to a very strong, great project. It's going to be a great project. We're breaking ground April and May.
Is that a low income
Yep.
project?
Yep, exactly the same.
Yeah, I was gonna say completely low income like this one is.
Yep. Yeah, it's more units, 56 units.
And if we can also reiterate that Pottstown already has a tax credit development in the Jefferson School Apartments. If you're familiar with that development, you know, from what I can see, it's very attractive and not a nuisance property. I think that what you could expect with this property would be something very similar.
I think there's an age restriction on that property.
Yeah, that is a senior project.
Just like the one that we lost,
Right. And that one, PHFA didn't like the location. And so that one's,
well, they only went one time, or twice they went.
we applied twice, but the feedback we got was, you know, it was in a too industrial area. And so they didn't.
That and there was several community groups that were vehemently opposed to it.
Yeah, they were, but the big factor for PHFA.
And council was.
Right.
in
The
support.
big thing for PHFA was that it was an industrial area and it was another vacant building, large vacant building near, right adjacent to it, and so they felt the site wasn't proper. This site, they think, would work really well, it would help support the neighborhood, and so, you know, for the neighborhood reasons, they're very comfortable with the site, and they've encouraged us to continue to put a strong application.
But there again, too, in defense of that project, it's less than 500 feet from beautiful brick homes.
Right. Oh, I love that
That are
project.
put
You
out.
know I love that project, but unfortunately, I don't get to
Just trying to
choose them.
figure out what the difference is between the two projects.
Our reapplication this year was motivated in large part by a direct request from state staff that we resubmit our application. We were told that we were highly competitive last year and just missed the mark, which I found to be encouraging, and we're strengthening our application for the next one.
But I have to say that, you know, if we don't get it this time, we won't be back again. So that'll be it. And, you know, break my heart to walk away from that building, because Ryan certainly knows what a beautiful building it is inside. I can see what a beautiful building can be. It's a little hard to envision some days, but it was cold today. We were in it today. It's really cold. But it'd be a shame for that building not to get redeveloped, and the private sector can't do it. It's just, the numbers just don't work.
Okay, we will have it listed for Monday evening for a letter of support for this project.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next up, rental ordinance amendment.
As council's aware, we did a reorganization of our licensing and inspections department a while back. One of the things that was pointed out through the analysis of what we currently have by our new licensing and inspections director is the fact that what we have in regard to rental inspections and making sure that we have a good grasp, we capture the number of rental properties in the borough, wasn't working as it was intended to do. The topic was discussed through the infrastructure committee. The topic was discussed ad nauseum within the administration. Directed the licensing and inspections director to come forward with a proposal of changes to create a system that is that works, that's legal, that's efficient, that's fair, and that captures all the rental properties and at the same time is rental neutral. If you recall, I believe it was last month or the month before, council directed the solicitor and staff to move forward with developing some changes to the existing rental ordinance, and I would ask our licensing and inspections director, Keith Place, to come forward and explain the rationale behind the recommended changes.
The proposed changes to the rental ordinance for the registration and the license portions, the way it is, the scope is limited. Some of the changes are basically technical, changing terminology from code enforcement to license inspections. One of the other sections is, it's minor, is based on the definitions for single-family apartment and short-term rentals. The change that probably is going to affect most is going to an annual inspection versus right now we do it upon change of tenancy. We do it based on the transfer of the property. We also do it based on if you have a long-term tenant of 5 years. Going to an annual inspection gives us the ability, we're going to be able to document the properties. We're going to be able to basically go into the annual inspection. It's going to give us a better ability into taking care of the issues where we have quality of life issues. It does help out with promoting economic development. It's going to promote neighborhood stabilization. Other issues, it's going to ensure that we have safe rental properties for the tenants. It's also going to improve the local housing stock, and it's going to protect property and income property values. But the biggest change is going to annual versus how we have it right now. There were approximately, based on 2 different studies, one that was done in-house with 5,200 residential units right now, based on the most recent one done the municipal study that was procured. They listed out 5,600 units.
Of the 56, they're currently licensed?
No, sir.
How many are licensed?
We have a record of about 2,500.
Out of 52.
Between 5,200 and 5,600.
Therefore, our therefore.
Correct.
But if we know about these units now, are we doing anything to enforce licensing of these properties?
We are starting to, but due to manpower constraints, it's hard to keep up on. And that's what the problem was originally to begin with.
So how is that going to be resolved by going to yearly inspections in the entire district?
But on the yearly inspections, we can actually schedule the inspections throughout the year. And it's actually beneficial to some landlords, or majority of landlords, where prior to wait 2 to 3 weeks, they might lose money because they couldn't get a tenant in due to the fact that they had to wait for inspections. When we get to once-a-year inspections, we're going to be able to schedule that inspection, and if they have multiple properties, we do more properties with that. It's more cost-effective for them in the long run. There were some properties where, based on change of tenancy, they might have had 2 or 3 times in a year versus once. The average rate would be for single family, based on the way the limits right now is $75. For apartments, it's 57, and for short term, it's 30. $40 for apartment buildings where it is anywhere from 3 to 6 units, it would be $60 a unit. If it's over 6 units, 7 and above, then it's $40 per unit. And then short term is at $30.
And do you have the manpower currently to be able to do yearly inspections?
Currently, with budget purposes, we are intending to hire 2 more inspectors, and that would more than based on our own calculations, yes.
So until you get those 2 more inspectors, what are we doing to be able to handle the workload of going to the inspections?
More recently, we did hire another inspector in-house. We have situated one of the property maintenance inspectors. She's been certified, but she is now helping out also.
Keith, can you speak up a little bit so that the rest can hear you? We came to hear you and we can't hear a thing back here.
Okay.
Move the microphone.
Move the microphone. Hold it,
It's on.
hold it.
I got a quiet voice.
There we go.
I just wonder if it would be more cost effective and efficient to outsource the entire rental program to an engineering firm.
By outsourcing,
Like currently, we're
realistically,
using Remington, Vernon, and Beech to pick up some of the rental inspectors, or we had it in the
we have
recent
been in the past, but you're talking about a single person doing inspections 3 days a week, costing on average $7,000 a month.
as compared to a full-time employee with benefits and incentives and.
But that inspector was only here 2 to 3 days a week also. So they weren't here 40 hours a week. The way it was projected in budget, it is revenue neutral. We will have 4 inspectors dedicated to rental properties. When they're out looking at the rental properties, they're also going to be responsible for looking at properties adjoining it on either side for property maintenance. The intent of the program is not just for rental. The intent is to take care of the property maintenance issues. It's to take care of the quality of life issues. It's to take care of life safety issues, not just on the rental properties. But because the rental program helps institute the rest of this, we're not here just to take on rental inspections. We're here to take on the problems that the borough has right now. The intent is to better the quality of life for the population of Pottstown, its residents, its property owners, and that's the intent of the program right now. Some of you may also recall the Remington verdict study that was done on the restructuring of the licensing and inspections department. And one of their recommendations was to enhance staffing for the purpose of catching up and staying on top of the inspections. We were understaffed. And by going to a once-a-year program, you're becoming proactive versus reactive. What's been troubling the department for the longest time is everything's been reactive. And it's reactive to tenant complaints, it's reactive to working with the landlords, trying to make things right. Working together by having this program, there's going to be a better interaction between the landlords, the property owners, and the code enforcement license and inspections department.
And I just have one more question that was, I know I heard concern of many, and it was a question that I really had. The current county housing inspections are done yearly, and the tenant can opt to have it done every 6 months if they choose. How does that work in conjunction with the borough inspection? So essentially, they could be a voucher housing apartment could be inspected 2.5 times a year. 1.5 by the county, and then 1 time by the borough. Is the borough going to work with the county together to streamline that, or will it still be 2 separate inspections?
It will be two separate inspections. The borough itself will be doing its own inspections. The county actually requires upon their inspection that there's a certificate that's been issued by the borough, that the borough's actually inspected it separately. I don't honestly know how many times the county's going to come and inspect those properties. They do have a regulated or mandated at least once a year. If the tenant requests for other inspections, then that will be up for them. But the borough has always done the inspections, so it's usually been on change of tenancy.
and that's usually what the county looks for.
Council Miller, on that topic also, the county, the inspections that are being performed by the housing authority are for the voucher housing. They do not, by regulation, by the fair housing law, they do not share with us when they're doing those inspections or whether or not they're doing those inspections. They care whether we're doing them, but we have nothing to do with the voucher inspections, so they will never be reviewed as the fair housing.
So will they be married to the Better Landlord Program for the same purposes that I mentioned about housing description?
Vouchered housing, I can't answer that because I doubt it, because again, vouchered housing is what it is. It doesn't have anything to do with a rental property. It's a means for the landlord and the tenant to be able to coexist, but it has nothing to do whether the property is a rental property or not a rental property.
Oh, no, that's interesting.
It's a red herring.
I think I've asked you before, Keith. Reading has a similar annual inspection, correct? No?
What was that?
Reading,
City Reading.
the city of Reading.
Reading has a similar program. There are different boroughs, cities, municipalities that have different rental programs. Some are annual, some are biannual. Some are once every 6 years, some are once every 5 years. The majority of them are based on change of tenancy. But to be able to administer a program and be able to administer it properly, to be able to administer it where it's financially suitable, because I have a responsibility to the constituents, your constituents, to the residents, to the taxpayers, to the property owners of the borough, not to overburden everybody with super cost. And it actually becomes more beneficial, cost effective for the borough administratively to be able to, once a year, be able to put in place a program where we can continually set up the inspections, work with the landlords, work with the property owners, so we're not doing one property here one day, they schedule for another property 2 weeks later, and they have to wait 3 weeks or 4 weeks before they can get an inspection. And then they lose money based on the fact that they can't get a tenant in because they're waiting on us.
Other questions? I, for one, am a little concerned that I think we're being a little bit too aggressive on going from once every 5 years to once every year. I mean, even in doing that, we still had over 2,600 units that are unlicensed.